Brindley, after making his Birmingham Canal, wanted to join it to the Staffordshire and Worcestershire Canal. So a set of 21 locks from Wolverhampton to Aldersley were built over 2 miles, dropping the canal by 121 feet. The canal opened in full in 1772, and these locks have remained an integral part of the canal system ever since. It's not for the faint-hearted to do these locks on your own with a loaded working boat in the middle of winter. However, due to some stoppages, I had to do this. It's very easy to waste and lose energy working locks. You have to work smarter, not harder, especially when there's this many locks and you have a long day ahead of you. The way I operate these locks might not be to everybody's taste. Many people frown upon the use of the boat to open a gate and the opening of paddles before other gates are closed. With careful operation and practice, it's possible to do this safely while conserving water and canal structures and still practicing the time-honoured traditions that the boatmen laid down for many centuries. The secret to doing any boating quickly is to always keep the boat moving. It was an important part of commercial carrying. If the boat wasn't moving, it wasn't making you money. And by moving, I mean not just along the canal, but up and down. So when working locks, it was important to have the lock ready, to have the boat go straight into the lock, to have the lock filling as soon as possible. Here am I using a technique called strapping. It's using the flush of water from the paddle to slow the boat down as it enters the lock. In days of horse boating, there was no way of easily stopping the boat. This would be a common technique to not only get the boat stopped, but to get the lock filling. Normally there would be 2 people with the boat and the steerer would be shutting the gate as the other would wind up the paddles. Once I have enough water and I'm happy that the boat's going to stop gradually on the sill, I start walking towards the back of the lock. This means that I can close the gates as soon as possible, closing one gate and then stepping across to close the other, and then walking briskly up to the top of the lock again to open the other ground paddle. Now both paddles are up and the lock fills quickly. Depending on the state of the locks, the next lock might be against me and I might have to run up to the next lock to start it emptying. Luckily, I happen to know that these locks all empty overnight, and since I'm the first up, nearly all the locks are ready for me. Knowing the road is one of the most important parts of boating, and knowing what you can and can't do. It's something that's brought from practice and regular use. Once the lock's full, the gate is pushed open. The boat is still in gear and soon starts ahead. The paddles are dropped, stepping across the boat to drop the offside paddle. And some power added to help the boat out of the lock. On some locks the sill is so shallow that it's actually easier to leave the ground paddles up while the boat leaves to allow the water into the lock. Once the boat is nearly clear of the gate, it is put astern. I give it some revs just to make sure that I'm sure that it's going to stop, and then I slow it back down to take over. Even though that the boat is still travelling forwards, I happen to know that it will soon stop and come back to me. The gate is closed and any remaining paddles dropped. Quick jump onto the boat and put it ahead, heading for the next lock. As we approach the next lock, some of the speed is reduced by going astern. Don't want to hit the bottom gates too hard. As I get closer and closer to the gates, I'll put more and more power on to make sure I bring it to a dead slow crawl before touching the gate. On the bottom gates near the centre are two metal plates. These are designed so that when a boat does push them open, the load is spread over a larger area. These gates are designed to be used like this. Put the boat ahead, in tick over, and let it find its own way into the lock while I go lock side to be ready to raise the paddle to strap the boat in. Strapping is an art, not a science. The water levels in the pound can greatly affect how much effect the water can have stopping the boat. If the water is too low, then a very small amount of paddle will allow you to stop the boat. If the lock is deep or the water is high, then you may need to add extra water. It also depends very much on how much cargo you have, how full the boat is, and if the boat is empty, it's sometimes very hard to gauge the exact time to make sure that when the surge reaches the deeper part of the boat at the stern, that it stops on the sill and doesn't crash into it. Once the lock is filling, there's some time for a bit of a breather, and this is often a good time to get the kettle on, polish the brasses or anything else that you might need to do. The trick to getting around locks is not to go near the edge too much. If you have to run away from the edge and make sure that there's plenty of room between you and the edge of the lock. Generally, a smart walking pace is adequate for most situations, and you soon get to gauge when you need to be the places you need to be, and so you can minimise the amount of rushing. Doesn't mean that you can't just have a gentle pace. You still need to be in the right places at the right time. So as soon as that boat hits the sill, you need to be on the bottom gates to be able to close them. Otherwise you're now wasting water, and you're going to need that water in the next pound to be able to get through it. Swinging one gate shut and jumping across the gap. Not always easy when you have a camera in your hand. And shutting the other gate. As soon as that gate is shut, the lock is filling. Going up to the top of the lock, you can raise the next paddle, doing so gently so as not to push the boat away from the sill as you wind it up. Winding any paddle on a lock, you should always keep an eye on the boat and the surroundings. You as a lock operator are responsible for the safety of the boat and the people around the lock. Always keep an eye. I hope you've enjoyed this little look at traditional techniques, how to work through locks. They won't work for everybody. It's one of the best ways to get a full length narrowboat through. If your boat is shorter, then you have a lot more room to play with. One of the important things to make note of is that if you do have a full length boat and the far end isn't on the sill, there's a possibility of catching a rudder in between the gates. Many a boatman have managed to sink their boats this way in days of old when speed was of the essence. One of the Blissworth tunnel tugs suffered this fate, and that was on wide locks. I would greatly appreciate if you enjoyed this video to like and subscribe to the notification feed, let other people know, and write in the comments if you enjoyed it, if you have any comments about the procedures, and if you have any questions. Happy boating.